Okay, awesome. So today we have on the podcast Transform with Jess. She is a life coach who is centered around trauma healing, manifestation. She also specializes in hypnotherapy, EFT tapping, and strength conditioning. So super excited to have you on, Jessica. Yeah,
I'm
let's
so
get to it.
excited. Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
Amazing. So let's just start off with like your fun questions.
Yeah.
What is your current morning routine that you are doing?
Yeah, so I would say like in the morning, my biggest non-negotiable is not checking my phone first thing in the morning, which is an incredibly challenging thing to do.
Yeah.
But it really is, the way that I've kind of found what works for me is like waking up and just getting up. And that's really been helpful to just kind of get ahead of the, mental negotiation that starts to seep in and ruminating about, what I have on my schedule today and like getting
Yeah.
stuck in that spiral. But maybe like a year ago, I read something that said every minute you spend online, you're having an opinion about someone else's experience rather than having your own experience. And that for me was kind of like, oof, like that was really powerful to read because just the perspective of that. And for me, it's really just about like having it be the first domino that kind of falls in my day. Like I really view our days as like this series of events, and we subconsciously carry the energy of what we've done previously into the things that we are going to do later in the day. So for me, that's why it's just so necessary to start that off on, a really grounded foot, as well as, holding that promise to myself, like having that just be like a confidence builder and being like, okay, the very first thing I did today was a promise that I kept. Like that's empowering. And now I can move forwards into more of like the actual things that I want to do in my morning. And, that really looks like journaling has always been an anchor for me. I've been writing in journals since I was like 6 years old.
Right?
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
and I still have some of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and with that, actually, it's interesting because that has recently kind of changed a little bit with the actual way that I've been approaching it. I think initially it was very rooted in like conscious journaling, where like
Mm-hmm.
I'm using the rational, logical part of my mind to like write about my gratitude and my manifestations and like how I want
Mm-hmm.
to be showing up in my day, which I think is obviously extremely valuable. But I had a friend introduce me to some like subconscious journaling or auto writing, channeling.
Ooh.
People have a lot of different names
Yeah.
for it,
Yes.
where it's really
Autonomic.
just
Yeah.
kind of, yeah, it's just kind of
Yeah.
going into it with like no expectations and not censoring yourself, just really letting whatever's up here, like out on the page. And a
Yeah.
lot of the time, like that first page might be junk, but then you find like these nuggets of wisdom that you just wouldn't have brought to the surface if you didn't have that like moment with yourself to really
Yeah.
dig up that like inner wisdom that we all have that exists within us.
Right, right. And it gets so clouded as we go throughout our day. So having that at the beginning of the day before you don't even pay attention, like on your phone and being clouded, that's huge. And I mean, I personally struggle with like the alarm snooze button. So that like jumping out of bed the first time really helps, and that's helped me actually stick to like, okay, I'm waking up at this time if I want to meditate or make room for my morning practice, because yeah, you can like talk yourself in and out of anything, especially when you're in that sleep state. So that's huge. That's helped
Yeah.
me an incredible amount. And yeah, I feel like I was talking to somebody about this, about like we were like this generation, it was like the OG journaling, because we had diaries like back in the day, like that
Oh
was
yeah,
like
there were no
we were
iPhones. There were
yeah, we
no,
were
yeah.
writing about our things, like our feelings and stuff, with our little locked pad, diaries from like the get-go.
I
So
love it.
we got the self-improvement down. Yeah.
For
Awesome.
sure.
So, okay, love that. And for what is something that you would consider your either most recent or your most powerful expansion moment?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely pinpoint that moment down to a day, which would be back in 2019, October 29th. And that is
Mm,
the day after my now ex left for, we were still currently dating at the time, left for the army. And the reason why that was so powerful is like, in my still unhealed mind at the time, like I had the relationship,
Hmm.
but he wasn't there. Like there was not that communication. So like it was kind of a bridge between like codependency and like
Gotcha.
first starting to kind of dip my toes into independence and like living for myself for the first time. Because that was definitely something that I really struggled with, and I'm sure we'll touch more on, is just that like sense of self and like
Yeah.
always seeking that out in external things. And at
Hmm.
the time, that was all just like the habits and environments and relationships that he was in. So I was like, coming out of that, like, who am I?
Hmm.
And that had been a question that I had been avoiding for quite some time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's a hard one.
and
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
So that there, the way that the tangible action steps that I was kind of taking at the time was putting to use the strength training certification that I had actually had for about a year and a half and just hadn't done anything with because
Hmm.
of, fear
Right.
and
Right.
limiting beliefs and all the
Right.
things.
Right. What?
Um,
I don't know what those are. No.
it's like,
Yeah.
what?
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, so that was happening, and at the same time, like my personal journey kind of started as a physical one with losing
Hmm.
some weight, and you know I was gaining some friends at work, and so my career and my healing actually kind of began synchronistically.
Mm.
And the way that that kind of snowballed into more of my journey is fast forwarding to maybe like right at the start of 2020, before everything happened.
Mm.
I needed continued education for the certification that I had, and I was introduced to I at random like chose this mind body fitness cert,
Hmm.
and it started to introduce like very baseline levels of like positive affirmations
Hmm.
and visualization and like neural rewiring, and
Ooh.
I was just fascinated like from the get-go.
Yeah.
And at the time I had created an Instagram account that at the time was Fitness with Jess before it transformed.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I started sharing like a lot of just my personal journey, and like what actually shocker, I started applying these things to my life, and I started to like notice a shift.
Yeah.
And that is really like, again, just concepts like personal alignment
Yeah.
and being like, I just thought I was like, oh, I'm doing these things that don't feel good, but it's what I've always done. And then it was like, oh, wait, these things don't feel good because they're not in alignment with who I
Hmm.
am and where I'm going.
Hmm.
And that, fueled empowerment in myself and confidence in myself to try to kind of like make some bigger life decisions. And one of those things was leaving the guy that I was with now, and actually expressing feelings to the man that I'm with and have been for the last 2.5 years. And we've built this like incredibly supportive and empowering relationship together. And that is like that's my big like first moment where I was like, oh, I did that for me. And I actually was like confident in my decision. I wasn't like, oh no, should I not have, you know what I mean? Like it was
Yes.
definitely this moment of like, oh wow, I did that and I believe in myself.
Wow. So it was like him leaving, your ex leaving, you signing up for your continuing education, following through with like being able to work out and just move your body, lose some weight, feel good, then meeting your now partner, and it just like
Hmm.
it's see, I think that's the coolest thing when we look back at even on our own stories where it's like, whoa, it was like this moment at this decision that like tumbled all of these other decisions. So it's like, yeah, that's incredible. That's where the expansion happens. It's like it's
It's so,
nuts.
and faster than you think, like
Yeah.
really, like that timeline, even just from that story I just told, was like 6 months. And like, I
Wow.
think that's a thing, especially in the beginning, like when you're first introduced to all these concepts, like it is like this period of just rapid growth and expansion
Yeah.
if you make it to be,
Yeah. And
So
also
yeah.
too, I think that like we especially now with like social media, you hear all of those kind of like buzzwords of like those things of like, how to transform or like you're rewiring your brain and it's like, okay, yeah, 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 let me just do it. But it's like sometimes they are so simple that it's like when you actually do the thing, you're like, oh, whoa, like they're not just this like fad kind of thing. They're actually super helpful when you do them consistently, you
It's
know?
so true.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the science of it is really like what did it for me. As soon
yeah.
as I started to learn like the actual facts of like how it works,
Yes.
like my jaw was just on the floor.
Yes,
Like it was
right.
fascinating.
I know. I get really nitty gritty into the research, like, because I have a nursing background and I love that math and science. So it's like anytime I'm like, any kind of studies that are done, or if they if they like coordinate it with like blood work or just what's going on in the body, I'm like glued to the screen. I'm like, whoa, this is
Right?
incredible.
There's like a
Yeah.
teenage version of myself that's like in shock that I'm reading research articles for fun.
Yeah. So funny. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So for our next question, what is the most alien thing about you? So this is like something that someone can think something strange of you, or you think strange of yourself, but you actually really love, because we all have something alien about us.
Yes, I love this question because I feel like my like awkwardness, my cringiness, my humanness is something that I've really embraced over the last year. I think one of the biggest themes I've actually been focused on is in communication. And, something that I observed myself doing is almost, I was comparing authentic, real human conversations with, like edited content and like TV shows and things that are just so scripted and so like projecting this illusion of perfection. And when I started showing up to client conversations about a year ago, when I started my business, like very
Yeah.
imperfectly.
There we go.
What is that? Yeah. Yeah, right. There we go.
Yeah.
And I had a really hard time with that. And like,
Hmm.
for a long time, I thought it was rooted in like my fear of how other people were perceiving me. But shocker, as soon as I started to become more okay with like all of that within myself, I stopped
Yeah.
caring what other people thought so much.
Yeah.
And, that really has, and this is something that I think to a degree I've kind of always had within me. But now it's just more solidified than ever. And that's just like not being afraid to like completely do my own thing.
Yeah.
And I grew up and I still live in a, small, traditional, pretty cookie cutter town. So I'm really like swimming against the current with a lot of the messages that I put out there.
Mm.
But I found a lot of purpose in that,
Hmm.
in, being that person for my, small corner of the universe. And locally, I've kind of become, this kind of safety net for kids leaving high school that want to do things differently, which I love.
Yeah.
And it's just, introducing them to ideas like conditioning and,
Yeah.
society's version of success doesn't have to be the way you define it for yourself. And just, again, so rooted in that empowerment and that personal alignment. And I think my ultimate mission has been to, really be the person that I wish I had for myself a decade ago.
Yeah, literally. I was just thinking that even for myself. Like, I remember when I was that age and just like knowing that you wanted something different. And I remember Googling, like, how to be happy, or what are the different options, or do I have like just questioning already, but not really knowing what the questions were, and just like disagreeing with like the standard form of the society path. And I, from the gate, was just like, that doesn't seem right. But it's like I had no resources or didn't know how to like look outside and see what that was, because I also didn't have anything in my awareness at the time, in my community or family or extended family or whatnot. It's like look around you and you're just like, wait. So to have somebody like you at that age as a resource of like, whoa, I can do something, like this is what, like it's like you're kind of like clicking in those puzzle pieces where like a lot of us really struggled a long time to try to fit and find on our own, and then you're just like, here you are, let me help you. That's amazing. That's amazing. Like,
Yeah, it's so great. And that kind of like, I mean, it really is a pivotal
yeah,
like season of life
it
to be
is.
in. But I didn't, I was experiencing what you just mentioned experiencing,
Hmm.
and I didn't know what to do with any of that. And
Yeah,
that led me into just, years of not knowing myself and continuing
yeah,
to just stuff down like what I deeply desired
yeah.
until I didn't even know myself
Hmm.
anymore. And then it was like the process of having to completely uncover that. So to be to really like catch them again, like right before
Yeah.
they can be empowered to spread their wings in a different direction is just like incredibly purposeful
Wow.
and feels really amazing.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Okay, since you touched on that a little bit, let's like get into what your journey was, like how you got into this. What would you say like the beginning of all of this kind of stirring was? Like either your spiritual awakening or just that transformation of your own. Where did it all start?
Yeah, so again, I think like back to the beginning of 2020, I didn't have the language for this at the time,
Hmm.
but I would say the first few months of the quarantine we were in was probably a time where I experienced like a dark night of the soul.
Hmm.
And that was just a time in my life where, I was highly triggered and there was just a lot of shadows
Yeah.
coming up and pain. And it was really intense, but there was also a lot of like rapid healing taking place because I was just like dropping all of this density that I had been carrying for so many years. And on the other side of that is when I really started to like acknowledge that my vibration was rising and like
Hmm.
I was making new choices and I was, uncomfortably getting comfortable existing in a reality that was completely foreign to like anything that I had ever experienced before and like really living for myself for the first time.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that period of time, like, I mean, everybody knows when you're saying like, oh, 2020, you like everybody knows what we're talking about. So it's like
Right.
even just like it's crazy how like a date can just hold so much weight, right? So like so many
Yes.
people went through that. It's like that was like a huge awakening for so many people to actually have. It was like really, if you think about it, like a lot of people, it was the first time that they could actually sit in their house and have time and space and maybe not energy, but at least like that time away from everything else,
Hmm.
all the outside distractions, all like the work, all the things, and it's like you're just there with yourself. You're just literally there for yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's I feel like a lot of people can relate to that time period because that was a really intense period for us all.
It
Yeah.
was.
So how did
Yes.
you what helped you during that process?
I think I wish I had this like defining moment of like my first connection with the
Yeah,
universe
it's
and having it
normally
be
not
this
that
big
clean.
moment, but I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Um, and
Again, the movie reference, like you think it's just going to be this like huge aha, and you're like, I get it now. This is my life's
yeah.
purpose. And it's just like
Oh yeah,
tripping
it's
and
so
falling and
true.
like like sleeping in,
Over
and
and
yeah,
over
I know.
again.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say like what I can bring it back to again is probably the journaling.
Okay.
And I don't know if I just found some like prompts online,
Yeah.
honestly, or something like that, but I just started getting into the habit of checking in with myself every single morning and like answering these specific prompts where to a degree it was in relation to like a connection with just a higher power, I think is what it referenced at the time. And to me, the language I started using and what felt good was the universe. And so that, beginning phases of that relationship with like this co-creator just only fueled more faith and
Mm.
confidence in like my goals and the dreams that I had. And then from there, I got into the books and I got into the podcasts,
Yeah.
and I can like pinpoint a season of my life in probably like fall of 2020 where I was just like this hermit that like didn't leave the house unless I had to because I was just like absorbing and integrating all of this
Hmm.
new knowledge and then again sharing that with other people. And I think that that is a huge part of it for me as well, is like through sharing my personal
Hmm.
journey is where I started realizing like, oh, this work is a lot bigger than me.
Yeah.
Like people are responding to this like really positively. Maybe there's something more here. Like maybe I want to actually use this like within my career, like whatever. I again like none of that at the time. It was still just like my little personal training gig and like just this is my side hobby.
Yeah.
And then it just slowly became like everything to
Yeah.
me. And it was just unavoidable that this is the path of life that I was
Yeah.
destined to take.
Wow. So through that uncovering, then you found your next path. Like I think that's so beautiful too, because like we're always in this transformation phase. Like we're never not becoming somebody new. It's like that's what the exciting part, and
So
also
true.
could be very overwhelming because it's like I know, especially in my experience, I'm very knowledge forward, so I love that. Like you said, that I really relate to that because I'm like all the books, all the podcasts, all the things. What can I learn? What are all the perspectives? Like just soak it up like a sponge. And sometimes I can go into overdrive and just want to learn too much. And then it's like taking space again to like allow that integration is like what I would struggled with at the
Totally.
beginning because it was like I was just like more, more, more. Like there's so much I don't know. But what would you say like your top,
Yeah.
well, like three books or podcasts or just resources that like took you through that beginning? Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, I would say that some of the first books that I started reading were written by Gabby Bernstein, who's
Hmm.
a motivational speaker in the manifestation world. And I'm pretty sure the very first one was The Universe Has Your Back.
Mm.
And that was where she really highlighted, in a pretty black and white way, which for me going into it as a beginner felt good in a way that you're always tuning into either the energy of love or the energy of fear. And now it's like fear can be guilt and shame and judgment and all those things, and love can be peace and gratitude and all of that. But for me to kind of have that, like, okay, so I'm either acting out of this place that's like keeping me small and holding me back, or I'm in this expansive energy that like
Yeah.
may feel scary, but also I know is leading me somewhere that feels like deep down in alignment.
Yeah. Ooh.
And I would say too, like podcasts. Haley Hoffman Smith is an amazing EFT tapping and
Ooh.
manifestation coach,
Okay.
and she is incredible resources. Catherine Zenkina, the manifestation babe, I
Uh-huh.
love. Reese Evans from Yes Supply, which is actually the Yes Supply method, is where I gained a lot of my certifications in 2021. So all
Awesome.
the female
Yes.
bosses, we love
Yeah, absolutely.
it.
Oh, amazing. I know, paving this way, right? Oh, I love those like
Seriously.
those resources. And I love sharing those because it's like it gives like other, I don't know, it's like that other perspective of you of like, okay, this is like what you've learned from your perspective. And thank you for sharing that. Those are some really good ones for sure.
Yeah. Good. I'm
Yeah,
glad.
for sure. So, okay, so once you started your business transformed from helping people in like the strength coaching to now this transformation. What does that look like for how did that look like for you going through that process, like stepping into that like role? Did you meet any resistance there or was it all just like, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, so with that is initially I knew I wanted to do something in this field, but again, there's not like a college degree
Oh,
in
yeah.
manifestation.
Yeah, right.
So so I had to just do a lot of like my own personal
Yeah.
research on, and I don't believe that we need a recertification in the
Right.
book if we have life
Right.
experience. That's another big part of it. But again, with like coming back to like facts and wanting to like know the why behind what I was
Hmm.
teaching, that was also an important part of it for me. So I just through like searching on Instagram, I came across Reese Evans, who founded the Yes Supply Method, and that is the course that certified me as a life coach, as an NLP coach, which I'll talk about, hypnotherapy and EFT
Hmm.
tapping. So with all of that, again, like getting into the NLP part of it, that was like the mindset and like learning about the language of the brain. And what that really did for me is help to like listen between the lines, which has been a really powerful skill that I've been developing over the last year and a half for myself and for my clients and just the other people in my life. But again, this was just another one of those concepts where, you know, learning about how the brain is set up on an autopilot to keep us the
Hmm.
same and how it perceives change as danger. And that's why we self sabotage
Right.
ourselves. Like these were all just like
Yeah.
mind blowing concepts to like be introduced to. So at the beginning, once I figured out what I was going to do, the other part of this is it was a financial
Yeah.
investment. So that was another thing where I was like, wow, like I'm going to commit to
Right.
this, like, and really invest in myself. And I think there's always like some level of fear that can show up with that, but for me, it was probably more of an empowering moment because again, I just kind of felt like I was like taking the reins of my life a little
Yeah.
bit and like making these bigger decisions. So that is what felt really, really good. Throughout the process, it's a self-paced
Hmm.
course, which I probably had seasons of, procrastinating it a little longer than others. But when it got down to the end of it, and I just said, I'm setting this deadline for myself and really, put it all out there. There was a lot of things like you had to jump on like live calls and like I pushed those all the way to the end,
Yeah.
like those types of
Right, right.
things.
You're like, ah.
And then it was really like game
Hmm.
time. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there were definitely like some small periods of resistance, but I don't think it was anything that like
Yeah.
wavered my knowing of like this is what I'm meant to
Yeah.
do.
So you just had it temporarily and then your why for it just like overrode that and was just like, no, we're not even listening to this. That's cool.
Yes, and within that too, I so today is actually the 1 year anniversary of starting my business.
How
So this feels
cool.
incredible to
Yes.
be having this moment on that day.
Yeah.
But I mean, I started my business still
Uh-huh.
working my other coaching job, like working for a gym in my town. And I still strength train. I still like train one-on-one clients in a gym again, just for myself
Yeah.
now. But I'm so glad that I had that. There was the part of me that's like, I'm just leaving it all behind and leaping into the
Yeah.
unknown,
Hmm.
and then, and that's not to say that that's not like something you can do, but I'm grateful that I had the time to kind of build the
Hmm.
foundation of what I have now, because now I've been full time in this for 2.5 months now, which I'm just so proud of that I was able to even get to in the first year of running
Yeah.
everything. So that was again just kind of like my test run of like figuring out my methods and my processes, and you got to fail your way to success, and I did a hell of a lot of failing at the beginning.
Yeah, it's so true because like it isn't like yeah, it's not like take this course and you'll be able to do this and like run your business this way. And it's like it's that trial and error of like okay, well, that worked, but I didn't really love that. So, but I loved that. How can I make this work? So it's like and it's like I feel like there can be so much shame around that on like failed and tried businesses or not being full time or feeling like people thinking that they have to go full time right away and they can't do their other job and it's like
Mhm.
no it's like it reminds me of that like black and white either or situation of like you're spiritual or you're modern or you're female or you're masculine. So it's like
Mhm.
kind of like getting over that and just like let's remember we're bridging everything together and like integrating every part of ourselves and even those parts of ourselves and not like separating those pieces. So that's I'm glad you're
It's
able to
so
speak on
true.
that because it's like yeah, you can do things at your own pace too and that's how you figure out your path and how your services like
Yeah, in
yeah.
retrospect, the sequence of events always like makes so much
Always,
sense.
yeah.
It's just like, oh yes, I
You're like,
needed
oh,
that
that's
to
why.
have this
Yeah.
happen, and of
Right.
course.
Oh my
Hmm.
gosh.
Yes.
Totally. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So what do your services look like now? Like what is your how do you offer what do you offer your clients? Like tell us about it. Hmm.
Yeah, so the one-on-one virtual sessions that I offer are one-on-one life coaching, like month-long containers that a lot of the time I'm so grateful that a lot of my clients stay for
Yeah.
longer. And it's, the way that I really run my coaching is, you're not just investing in like X amount of sessions. Like you are investing in like all I have to
Hmm.
give. And I really, don't take that role lightly. Like my mission is to build those intimate relationships. And I think one of my favorite things about this work in general is just, getting to meet people deeper than 99% of the world sees
Yeah.
them. And I just, being able to give them all of my energy and all of my knowledge and my heart and soul, and like, and part of it too that like I think a lot of people maybe don't see on the behind the scenes angles, like I choose people that I feel in alignment
Hmm.
with, and that's a position that I wasn't in when I was starting and like trying to get everything off the ground and everything, but now I'm in a position where I'm able to really tune into what I feel is
Hmm.
right. And, and trusting my intuition to bring those relationships into my life. And I've had massive success in that, and I'm very grateful. So with that, the one-on-one life coaching sessions definitely integrate some of the hypnotherapy and EFT tapping, which I also offer as single sessions one on one. But it's really been amazing. TikTok, which is how we
Yes.
connected, is something that's been a little bit newer
Yeah,
for me in
same.
the last not even 6 months. And the reach on there is
Yeah.
just like absolutely
Yeah.
crazy. It's so wild to like really sit on my couch at home and be talking to someone from across the country.
Literally.
Like that's a dream
And
come
the
true.
feedback too
It's
that you
so
get on
cool.
it of like feels more conversational than other platforms that I use. So it's like when you put something out there that like, especially you have amazing TikToks, like so supportive in all of your videos.
Oh,
Oh,
thank you.
definitely. So definitely check her out on her TikTok. So I'll link that in the profile. But um,
Oh, I
yeah,
love that.
and it's like to be able to support people on that platform like that and then just have like, yeah, the feedback that comes from that and like conversations that stem from that too is just super fun to have. Like it's that's the coolest
Yeah.
part too, where it's like we're in this age where you can learn so many different things and improve yourself in so many different ways. So yeah, I mean it can definitely feel overwhelming for people, so many different resources, but it's good to just go where you're, yeah.
And yes, that's a good point because there is definitely those moments where like you'll see on all of my platforms, I follow like
Mhm.
50 to 150
Mhm.
people, like max. And even that sometimes I have to mess around with just based
Same.
on, what's
Yeah.
going on with me. But that's the thing too, is like at the end of the day, you know, and even as a coach, like it's really our job to be empowering other people to, again, tuning into their own internal
Mhm.
wisdom. Like we're not this like high and mighty person. We may be, one or two steps ahead of them in the game, but we are still in the same game. Like we're still doing the same
Yeah.
thing. And I think that when you are living that so authentically, it just brings so much more passion and power to the conversations that you're having and the work that you're doing because you know it because you've lived
Yeah.
it.
Oh, that's such a beautiful point too, because it's like for people to step in as coaches too, either you can feel that imposter syndrome because you're trying to be this whole persona of like having it all together, which is like nobody has anything together. We're all just figuring it out as we go. And it's so important too
Hmm.
that you make that like so clear. And I definitely resonate with that of no, your truth, like you have your own intuition first. Like I could help be a guide for you, I can show you like the bumper carts of what I've experienced up until this
Yes.
point, but it's like no, you're gonna have to make those decisions like for yourself. And I think more content like that of being able to trust within your own decision making is needed. So definitely, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's funny because I have my moments where like I script out my points and I have my like topics of knowledge. And then there are times where I like feel like I'm just posting on like my private story. And I'm like, oh yeah, there are 8,000 people that are gonna actually maybe potentially see this. Like you kind of like desensitize yourself to that. But I think that's such a beautiful part of it. And too, like coming back to like the authenticity, like there are so many people again, like we just didn't, there are so many things like, binge eating and like just things that I experienced as a
Mm,
teenager that like I thought I was going to take to my
mm.
freaking grave. Like the amount of shame I carried about just like all of those things that are now like people have built entire careers off of taboo
Yeah,
topics like
yeah.
that, that again, just like weren't available to us a
Right.
decade
And it's
ago.
like for you to even like speak that out loud too, and just like for us not to keep that in our dark place is like it's like bringing that
Hmm.
light to any of those kinds of emotions, especially shame, immediately takes the power away from it. So it's like when we can have those conversations with people so authentically and raw and just hold space and just be like, oh my God, you did that too, or you experienced that too. And then you're like, oh my gosh, you don't feel as like, alone in this world trying to figure things out. And I think that's
Yes.
like, a huge thing that we can feel, especially during that like 2020 phase and then even forward after a lot of relationships like reconfigured, or you went through this transformation process but like a lot of your friends didn't. So it's like you can feel lonely in these spots if you are in those different vibrations, which can be difficult. So it's like that even adjustment of being in communication or feeling like you're a part of a community, even if it's a social platform. Like being a part of your TikTok isn't like just watching you. I feel a part of your day to day or a part of your lessons. So it's like, it's that
Right.
aspect too, where it's like, even when you're like, oh, I'm just posting my life, but that's what people like feel connected with too.
It's
Yeah, it's
connection.
all about the
Yeah,
connection. Yeah.
totally. No, and I love that point that you made about like when you again when you become aware of things like alignment and
Hmm.
energy, and you start to notice like, oh wait, like again, like this relationship is holding me back, or this thing is not, I don't want to keep in my life. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
clearing at the beginning that's really scary and like can leave space for a
Hmm.
while. And I think that that space between, what you have and what you want is what scares a lot of people back into past patterns. But if you are staying in alignment with yourself and just holding that priority above anything else, like the things will come. They will so come. And it's all about, showing up as the person you want to be before you have evidence of, your desires and your reality, and just holding that energetic standard
Yeah.
for yourself.
Okay, so if somebody is very new to this alignment and just they're like, "Whoa, I don't really know what this is." How
Yeah.
can you give someone just like some steps of like what that would look like to even assess their life right now, or what you do personally? Does it go back to journaling, or how do you go through and assess to see if you are in alignment, and then if you're not, then how do you kind of make those steps, or at least those little baby steps towards finding that?
Totally. A lot of I think, I mean, there's so
Hmm.
many techniques that you can go about doing this, but I think one of like the simplest ways that you can just kind of get it all out to start is, right. You can break it down into, categories of your life, my friendships, my work, my family life, my alone time, whatever you want
Hmm.
those to be, and just starting to take inventory of like what is, because a lot of the time, like, yeah, we're existing and we're having these experiences, but we're not actually writing down like, oh, I'm spending my entire weekend
Hmm.
drinking, or I'm do and like actually like get it out, like get vulnerable with it, and like put it on paper and get accountable for like what's been created up until this point. And then at that point, like with the same column, the same categories, you start to write down your desires, and you don't
Hmm.
shrink them. You really just write down exactly what it is that you want. And then from there, you don't need to have it all mapped out, how I'm going to get from step
Yeah.
A to step Z. The action breeds
Mm.
clarity. So as long as we know that first step that we're going to take, we get to step A, and then we'll be able to figure out step B. And there's really like a lot of the time with this stuff, like it's just making the hard decisions.
Hmm.
It's just, separating yourself from, we're so conditioned to normalize so many things that are like so toxic for
Yeah.
us. And it's just a matter of, stepping back and being like, okay, yes, this is normalized, but is this optimal for
Hmm.
me? And again, coming back to like like having that yourself and your self-care and your alignment be the thing that you prioritize over anything else, over anything that people have to say, because they probably will. But at the end of the day, they're, that's the other part of it is, when you are raising your vibration and entering new energy, the people that were in the old energy are gonna probably feel that space
Hmm.
happening, and that might bring up some triggers and mirrors for them that they don't want to acknowledge. So what are they going to do? They're going to project that pain onto
Hmm.
us, and they might try to drag us back down. So again, it's just about, standing in your power and knowing that where you're headed is better than where you've been.
I love that point. Oh my gosh. The part where you had bringing it back to, even though I forget the exact quote, but even though like certain situations or things that you do are normalized, that part I really loved, because so many things around us
Hmm.
in our society are normal. It's normal to do X, Y, and Z. It's normal to go out and celebrate and maybe get smashed, or it's normal to, complain about your job and just be like, oh my God, I hate life, or like, I'm just exhausted all the time, and just like all these
Hmm.
things that feel so normal. And when you take a step back and you're actually like, whoa, these aren't actually all my options, or I don't have to do things this way. Or even when you start that process of trying to like unlearn those things, you get that kind of like rebound back from people around your life when you do try to make those decisions. They're like, wait, what are you doing? This is what we do, you know? So it's kind of like threatening even
Yeah.
their own existence or their actions, their decisions. And so when you choose to make, you know, a different choice, it can really be difficult, like, you know, in that same kind of energy, like you had said, like the same circle that you're in, it can be really difficult for people. And then you want to just kind of blend in and do the same thing again because it feels like very like you've been reprimanded for trying to do something different, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I think that, on the other side of that, this won't happen in
Hmm.
every case, but there will be instances where, like, you just doing this work has
Yeah.
that ripple effect on the other people in your life. Personally, I've seen my entire family go through, seasons of personal development and accountability, and just it's completely changed our dynamic and our one-on-one relationships within ourselves. And that's not something that I ever, tried to shove down anyone's throat, because you
Yeah.
can't do that.
No.
You cannot try to, that everyone has their own journey and on their own timeline. And it's just a like, let people
Yeah.
watch you. Just keep doing your thing and let people watch what you're doing. And like, it'll get to the point where they'll be like, okay, they seem to be doing pretty well
Right.
in their life. They must be
Right.
onto something. And just being that
That's so true
influence.
too, because like I get really excited when I learn about something new, and I want to like tell everybody I know. But at the beginning, that's what I would do, and be like, "Oh my God, you have to read this book. It's like life changing." But it's like it's that shoving piece where it's like, okay, either they're not ready for it, or they're that's not their path, or that's not their journey yet, maybe. But it's like you just like you had said, being that person and just making your own personal changes, not trying to change anybody else, not trying to do anything else outside of just focusing on, reshaping yourself, then yeah, that itself, it's like even as you raise your vibration specifically, people feel that energy shift. They feel it even though they don't know what's
Yeah.
happening or they can't put words to it or they're just
Hmm.
mad at you for whatever reason. It's just because you're holding that different kind of level of space, which is, yeah, definitely good to, I'm sure a lot of people listening would also be like, yeah, that happened to me too. Like it just, yeah, it's just that
Totally.
rebound for
Totally.
sure. Oh, I love that. There was another point to that, but it slipped my mind. Wow. So with your with your coaching, you do different sessions. So you do monthly sessions and you do specialized just EFT tapping or hypnotherapy individually. That's very
Yes.
cool. So they can kind of experience, one of those modalities if they haven't experienced that before. Because I've never experienced hypnotherapy. That would be super cool to try. So that's cool that you offer that like one-on-one
Yeah.
sessions without doing like, the monthly sessions. So I like that.
Totally. And, with that, I think a lot of people with that modality either come in
Hmm.
super intrigued, or they have all these preconceived beliefs about hypnotherapy just due to, like, performative hypnosis
Right.
on stages or what we see in the movies. But, the way that I've heard it described, which really resonates, is it's really like deep meditation
Mm.
with a goal. And, with that, the work that's actually happening is we're bypassing, the logical, rational part of our mind. And, we're really being able to directly speak to the subconscious, at the level that these problems are existing at. And, you mentioned very early on in the podcast, that sleep state. And that is really essentially what's happening. The trance state that you enter in hypnosis is a very
Hmm.
familiar state to our body. We enter it as we're falling asleep at night, and then every morning as we wake up. It's really just, again, a
Hmm.
slowed brainwave state. We're able to bypass and kind of suspend our disbelief, and again, just really get into more of the depths of the mind. And it's an incredibly powerful healing modality that, again, it was not something I originally seeked out. I was just kind of looking for more of like a umbrella
Yeah.
life coach certification. And as soon as I started learning about it, it's something I implement. I mean, you can do self hypnosis, there are apps, so it's something I
Yeah.
definitely use, again, even myself, because I think with all these modalities, you need to have personal experience and like your own transformation to like get so passionately behind
Definitely.
the healing that it
Definitely.
can
And
provide.
two, it's like there's
Yeah.
so many modalities out there. So it's like if you don't if you don't like feel pulled to or called to or feel enough shift in one modality, it's like not forcing that, because I feel like especially when it comes to like
Yes.
routines, I feel too, or when you read a book and you're like, oh, well, they tell me to do this, this, and this, and that'll change my life. But you have so much either resistance or like it's just not working. Like it's not cookie cutter for everybody. Like that's why there's so many things out there that you can try and do. So it's like if one doesn't work, try it for enough to actually give it a go, but if it really doesn't resonate,
Hmm.
there's another one that you can try. So that's really cool. What would you say your
So true.
yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think, and even no, I can just even think of like a personal example of that, with a client just talking about, trying to find some modalities that would work with him to help him clear his mind. I think is like was our intention, and we were trying all these things, and it was just like, okay, 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 yeah, so, and then I just sat down with him, and I was like, you know what? What is the thing in your life that clears your mind? He's like, skateboarding, and I'm like, okay, let's start skateboarding. There's no self-help book out there that's saying skateboard to change your life. But if that's going to work for you and that's what you need to do at the end of the day to, reset and call your energy back to
Yes.
yourself,
Yes.
freaking
Oh
skateboard
my
all
gosh.
day. Like,
100%. Exactly. There's no book out there that's, maybe he'll be the first one to write that book. But yeah, it's like finding that,
right?
like, there's so many ways that, like, we can get into that, like, flow state. And it's so specific to each person. And it's just
Yes.
amping that up on yourself. And you can't get there without that self exploration of knowing who you are or what you like or what actually works. So it's like uncovering that first,
Absolutely.
and then it's like, oh wow, actually I really love to be outside, or I love, yeah, that's incredible. So like recommending that. I'm sure after, skateboarding a few days in a row, he'd be like, oh, I'm feeling great actually, because it's something that he actually enjoys. He blows off steam, able to get like
Yes.
mental clarity because he's probably really enjoying himself, feeling really, really good about himself. I think that's beautiful. I love how you pointed that, because like it's not
Yeah.
even modalities that are like coined like, okay, this is going to help you, like meditation, EFT tapping, like this is what's going to process your emotions. Like it could be
Yeah.
anything that you feel really good
Hmm.
about when you do it, like crafting or I don't know why that
Totally.
came to my head right away, but I
No,
love
no,
creating,
I
so
love it. And even like, I mean, no, that's great. And I think too, like even another one I can think of is like, when visualization was
Mhm.
first introduced to me, it was introduced to me in a very like, you have to have your eyes closed, this meditative state, like this complete state of like
Yeah.
silence and stillness. And I started recognizing within myself, like, when I have the highest vibrational moments where I'm like visualizing and stepping into the energy of my highest self, it's when I'm like dancing, or it's when I'm, grounding outside in nature. And it's like all those things again that like you get to, there's the guidelines, but then it's kind of
Yeah.
like you get to pick and choose. You get to choose like the things that feel good for you to do. And again, that's a living, breathing thing
Hmm.
within itself, is like that can change as
Yeah.
you evolve as well. So it's like not putting this, strict, I've been journaling for this many days in a row. If it doesn't feel good to do
Yeah.
anymore,
I
like switch it up a
I
little
think
bit.
that
There's no
also goes
shame in
back
that.
to our original programming and the way that things should be done, and unlearning that. And it's even
Yeah.
the degree of that personal development of like, okay, yeah, there's all these things that help these other people, but also it boils down to that intuition part, that listening to yourself, that like that own inner knowing. And it's like, okay, you have all of these things that are telling you to do this or this, X, Y, and Z, but it's like, okay, how does it actually feel within your own body? And then how to perceive, how to move forward with that.
Yes.
So, yeah, definitely. Oh my goodness.
Totally.
Okay, so I was going to ask, like, what's
Love
your
that.
current favorite modality that you do, if you haven't mentioned it yet? Hmm.
Interesting. I think that, yeah, the thing is like when I first started with all this, it was very
Hmm.
mindset based. And then I would say from the start of this year and up until this point, what I've been really throwing myself into is like nervous
Mm.
system regulation and
Mm.
trauma in the body. And that is, an entirely different game because I mean, there's so much power obviously to the neural energetic rewiring that we can do, but if we're not also turning in and understanding that like while our brain might have completely forgotten that something happened, our body is still holding on to that. And so I would say maybe with that, EFT tapping is a somatic experience working with the body, where it's working with those,
Hmm.
energy meridian points that are responsible for
Hmm.
controlling stress. And, there's a lot of power behind the technique, outside of just, triggering your parasympathetic nervous system and really like sending yourself into that state of rest and digest. What we know now is that any negative feeling or emotion is really, again, just energy stuck
Yeah.
somewhere in our body. So we get that energy flowing again, and it's regulating us out of these chronic states of stress and burnout and fatigue. And then you're pairing that, with building the new neural pathways. And there's that sweet spot between doing that work and then also working to, remove the emotional charge that's attached to those old feelings or those
Hmm.
old memories, because we're not always in control of when those are gonna show up. A lot of the time, I recently had some stuff show up for me where I was feeling on top of the world. And in this conversation with a friend, she's like, yeah, and your soul knew that it was time to dive into a deeper level of your psyche and pull
Right.
something out for you to look at that, like, I didn't think was going to show up for me ever again. And, it's the
Layers,
never
yeah.
ending game, but
Yeah.
it's so
It's the
rewarding.
layers. It's like
Layers,
that.
layers. Yeah.
And I think that's the beautiful thing too, because we're not ever trying to get to this specific destination. Like it's just continuous. It's like, and I had that also happen to me just very recently about a past trauma, and I was like, this is crazy. I already did this. So I just had like a few days ago, I was like, I'm
Literally,
way past this.
literally.
And it was like, no, no, hon, your energy's still stuck there.
Hence the hair
I love
change.
that so much. Yeah. So
Yeah.
before we started the podcast, we had also talked about how transformation will happen on the outside too. And so I was telling Jess that I
Mhm.
noticed her hair change, and I love the color change. And I tend to change my hair, and I haven't been changing it at, well, that's, some would say no, but I change it anytime I have a transformation or something happens. When something happens in the inside shift of me, I love to express it on the outside. So it's like I will dye my hair, cut my
Yes.
hair, a piercing, a tattoo. I love expression on going through something, especially if it's something major. I just like it's a part of my story. So, and yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
no, yes, right. That's actually so true too. Yeah, no, I really love that. And to like really be able to like look back again in those seasons of life
Oh,
and be
and I
like, oh,
do.
yep,
Like
I
when
know
I flip
exactly
through
what
my
that girl was
photos, and
going
I was like,
through.
I remember when you had orange hair, purple hair. I remember that jet black bob. Like it's just
Right?
like you just know, and it's like that beautiful, just ever progression of like us always. It's like it's not even that like the caterpillar butterfly. It's like it's continue caterpillar butterfly caterpillar butterfly. It's just like constant of like you're never just
Yes.
there and you're grown and you're good to go. It's just you have those phases where you have to go in, lock yourself back in your room and like cry it out or get another book or go underneath another layer and then you arise from that a new person, and it's like allowing yourself to go through that journey over
Yeah.
and over and like have, I guess, not judge any part of that either, because I feel like there's so much of us too that was
So
just like,
true.
damn, I thought I healed that. And then we could feel kind of like frustrated with ourselves if we have to go through it again. And it's like, okay, no emotion is good or bad. It's just allowing it to flow and allowing it to be what it is and just meeting it and feeling it and being present with it. And it'll release, and before you know it you'll be like on the other side again,
It's
and you're
so
like,
true.
whoa. Yeah.
Right? Seriously. And I really like to view that whole experience and process as like growing in a spiral staircase, because a lot of the time we're looking down at it with this bird's eye view and it just feels
Yeah.
like we're going in circles. But we're not. We're meeting these deeper layers of ourselves, like with strength, with more experience, with deeper healing. Like every time that we have to come back to that process, we're not really back anywhere. We're
Yeah.
still moving forwards. It's just, again, you're just meeting it
Yeah.
at a different level. You're
Yeah,
raising
and
and
you're still at
meeting
a
it again.
different level of awareness, like you had said. Like you already went through a different, certain chunk, or you already had awareness about this to a certain extent, and it's like you're just kind of having a more, yeah, a different view of it. So I think that's perfect. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah.
And empowering yourself.
We
It's
got
like, I've
this.
been here
Yeah.
before. I can do this
We
again.
got this.
Like,
Well,
we
I
got
feel like
this.
that's a
Yeah.
beautiful note to just end it on. We got this. Yeah, this
Totally.
was
We
such
got
a great
this. I love
conversation.
it.
So where exactly, so we can find you on TikTok, right? And is your Instagram the same?
Yes. So my TikTok
Okay.
is actually what's different. If you can find me and DM me about sessions on Transform with Jess on Instagram, and then on TikTok it is just my name,
Okay. And that's
Jess.Attridge. You can find me.
Attridge, right? Attridge. Okay, great.
You
Definitely
got
will
it.
link you with the in the comments and
Awesome.
anything.
Thank you so much for this experience. I'm just like
Yeah.
grateful. Like this was just so much fun. I love connecting with, other people that are just like living their most authentic life. And I think that's what drew me to you
Oh,
more than anything is just you wear
yeah.
what you do on
Yeah.
your
I'm
sleeve,
like,
and it's
again,
really
here I
beautiful to
am,
witness. So
very
thank
raw.
you.
But yeah, that's what I
I love
love.
it. I love
And I
it.
mentioned this before before we chatted, but like this is why I wanted to start this podcast, this platform. I love these conversations. I personally learn from hearing other people's stories so much. It takes me back to that like original like learning of that storytelling, and it's like feels back to that where it's like that's how I really resonate, really connecting with people on their journeys, and these are my favorite conversations to have. So it's like I need to record these and share these with other people because I feel selfish if it's just I keep them all to myself. So
Oh,
thank you
you're
so
doing an
much
amazing
for
thing.
being
You're
on the
doing an
show.
amazing
And
thing.
yeah, I can't wait to keep
Of
connected with you.
course.
And make sure to follow Jess, check out her services. I
Awesome.
might be trying the hypnotherapy. That sounds very
Thank
cool.
you.
And yeah, awesome.